We welcome Diamond Farnsworth this afternoon, and Diamond is an award-winning stuntman, stunt coordinator, all-around good guy, the son of Richard Farnsworth, who was a really good friend of my dad's, and we're delighted to have you with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Now, your current show is NCIS.
Yes.
You were doing JAG before that?
Right, we did JAG before that for 10 years, and then Don Belisario wrote NCIS, which is actually the people who really are supposed to do what JAG was doing.
Oh.
Yes, see, when we were doing JAG, he got a lot of slack because they were lawyers, and they were going out and solving crimes. Well, that isn't what they do in the military. They have a company called NCIS that does all this. And so he decided, well, we'll write a deal on NCIS. And last week we were just told that we are the #1 TV series in Hollywood.
Wow. Of course, it doesn't hurt that you have Mark Harmon as the lead, too.
I gotta tell you, Mark Harmon is the one that makes it work. Mark Harmon is absolutely a prince of guys to work for. He takes very good care of his crew, and when we get scripts and we break them down and you read them, and you read the script and you go, boy, this isn't very good. But then when you see it, after they show it, you go, wow, that was pretty good. And that's because of Harmon, his interaction with the other actors who do a great job. And you could put other actors into this spot and it still wouldn't be a good show. But it's the actors that really pull it off together. They have a great bonding situation together, and they really make it work.
Now, you followed in your dad's footsteps because he was a stuntman, but
Right.
What was your first project?
My first project was a show called Paint Your Wagon with Lee Marvin and Clint Eastwood, and that was done in 1968. My father took me up on that show, and it was a great way to make a lot of money and don't have to do anything. So I kind of fell into it, and when we got back, I started working extra, and I started working on a TV series called Here Come the Brides. And from that, they started having me double Bobby Sherman for some horseback riding stuff, and my career just started building after that. And then I started on the Partridge Family, being a bad motorcycle guy. I was a bad guy, and always picking on David on the show. And from that then on, I just started working more and more. And in the 1981 or 81, I believe it was, Don Belisario hired me to do a TV series called Tales of the Gold Monkey with Steve Collins. And that was my first stunt coordinating job. And from then on, I've done everything that Don Belisario's done. So I've actually worked for 28 years solid for
Wow.
Mr. Belisario.
That's really unusual.
Yes, it is. I've been very lucky.
Well, now, you did a lot of stunt work for Scott Bakula, didn't you?
Right, and that was a Don Belisario show. That was Quantum Leap. We did 102 episodes of that.
It's so unusual to hear of a stuntman especially who's involved just continually like that for the one. That's really unusual. Now, most stuntmen specialize in different things. What are your specialties?
Well, I was very fortunate because when the Westerns were dying down, I started riding motorcycles at a young age, and I got into cars. And when everything kind of made the jump from Westerns to the police shows, if you remember in the 70s, everything was a cop show, and we have car chases and motorcycle chases. I kind of got on the bandwagon, so I got to work through all those, where all the guys were just cowboys they stayed at home. So I kind of got lucky that way.
But now you have another specialty, don't you, with this stuff now? Aren't you the helicopter pilot?
Well, we do a lot of flying on JAG and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, quite a bit. Your dad and my dad happened to be here at the same time in 1938 when Dad was making his first movie. Wasn't it your dad's first?
No, it wasn't his first.
Oh, it wasn't his first.
His first was a thing called Marco Polo. And that was done in 37, was when it was.
Yeah, I got so tickled. The first time that I remembered being able to have a long conversation with your dad when I was an adult, the first thing he did was tell me Dad's hat size, because he ended up doubling Dad on something. And he still remembered that. And I couldn't believe it all those years later and everything. I was really impressed with it. But my dad just had the utmost respect for your father and always spoke of him so affectionately and all. And he didn't always speak that way of some of his other stuntmen.
Well, stuntmen are, I'll say one thing. When I got into the business doing stunt, it was probably one of the greatest times to do it for me. And I knew all the older stuntmen and who helped me out and to help me where I am today. The newer stuntmen that are come in, they don't have a clue of who the older stuntmen were and who some of the great stuntmen were. They just think it's all about them. And that's why I personally do not think stuntmen deserve awards. I think we're magicians. We stay behind the scenes, and that's kind of my feelings about it. I some of the stunt guys I know think that they ought to get Academy Awards, and why? I mean, that's why I look at it. I think it's for the actors. We're there to make them look good, and as long as the paycheck's cash, that's what we should care about, and that's it.
Now, your daughter.
My daughter is a stunt girl. She doubles Ziva on NCIS for me, and she's just had a baby, so it's my first grandson, and she's working quite a bit right now after she had the baby. It's kind of neat that she got right back into it after having a baby, and working. She's been working on CSI New York quite a bit. So.
I like that show. That's a good show, too. Aren't there several families of stunt people still that are very active?
Well, one of the famous families were the Epper family. And they had, John Eppers had 6 kids, and they all got into the business, as we all know. And probably his daughters were probably the most well-known, Jeannie and Stevie Eppers. They did a lot of Wayne stuff, and these girls are tough, I gotta tell you. If there was a wagon to wreck or something like that, they were right there.
I grew up with them. They were really tough.
I'll tell you how tough they were. And I mean, this is a true story. They were all together one year for Thanksgiving, and Tony Eppers, he's the oldest, his wife came in and said, "Honey, the turkey's ready, let's go eat." He says, "No, we're watching this football game." And kind of ticked her off. Now, these are tough people. She literally picked the TV set up and threw it out the window. He got mad, went and grabbed the turkey, threw it out the window, and the dogs got it. Next thing you know, there's a full fight. And it's a full-blown fight, like a barroom fight. And they all come up shaking hands, and it was all over. But that's the way they were.
They were like that when they were little bitty kids, because they lived at the end of the cul-de-sac where Dad's horse
Chatsworth.
trainer. And no, actually in Van Nuys. It was on I think on Long Ridge when we were little. That's where, no, on Long Ridge, right off of Sherman Way, when we were
Oh,
little bitty kids.
okay.
There was Glenn Randall and then Fess Reynolds,
Right.
Jug and,
Right.
and Slay's dad, and then like 2 houses, and then the Eppers were on the cul-de-sac, and they were all in there. And so I remember being really small, and this family, I mean, I'd never seen anything like it. I mean, they fought all day, every day. It was just incredible. If I had done something like that, my mother would have killed me. But that was just how they grew up. So I wasn't surprised at all when they all went into stunts. I mean, it just, because they'd been doing that their whole lives.
And like I said, the girls were the toughest. They really were.
Oh, they had to survive those boys.
And they would. There's a great stuntman, Joe Canut, and that was Yakima Canut's son. He ran all of Charlton Heston's shows, and he would always hire them because, boy, if you want somebody to hit the ground or whatever, they're the girl to do it, and they were tough. I can tell you. In fact, Jeannie Eppers met her husband in a bar. He was a cop. Now, this is a tough story. They were in this bar, kind of a nudie bar, I'd say, and the Epper girls started making fun of the dancers, and the fight broke out. The strippers came off the stage, and there was a full-blown fight with the Eppers, and her husband was a cop that came and arrested her. And 2 weeks later, they were married. So that's, that's pretty good.
Crazy business.
Yeah.
What was it that you did on the Rambos?
I doubled Stallone on the Rambos. In First Blood, I doubled him. And then in Rambo, I coordinated it and doubled him. Did all of his stunts.
How was he to work with?
You know what? He's not a bad guy. When you got him one-on-one, he was absolutely one of the nicest guys you ever wanted to talk to. But when he had all of his bodyguards around, you just got, okay, we'll go somewhere else. He was showing off to them all the time.
What has been your favorite crew to work with?
I'd have to say I have several favorite crews because I've done so many shows, but Quantum Leap, the crew was absolutely fantastic. Scott Bakula is such a professional. And I mean, here's a guy that would have to go home at night and learn his lines for the next day. But when he got off work, he helped all the grips put away everything that needed to be put away. Then he went to the gym, and then he went and learned his lines, and he was back at the studio at 6:30 in the morning. Wow. And that tells you a lot about a guy right there. He give you the shirt off his back. He's absolutely one of the nicest guys in Hollywood to work for.
What was the craziest?
Stallone. Yeah, to work around Stallone. I mean, it was, a lot of egos kind of fly when you have all of those male actors together. So I'd have to say,
testosterone.
a lot of testosterone flying. So.
Of the stunt coordinators that you worked with, who was your favorite? Who did you think?
Well, I'd have to say a guy who worked me all the time was Joe Canut. And he helped me a lot, and Lauren Janes helped me a lot, He brought me on a show to do a bunch of horseback riding. And in fact, the actor's here, isn't he? Yeah. Hugh O'Brien, on a Hugh O'Brien show. And so Lauren's helped me a lot. And there's been a lot of them, that have, helped me.
What was the wildest stunt you were asked to do?
I would have to probably say there's probably rolling underneath the train, which was kind of a difficult deal to do because you had to count as we were laying on we were on a trestle, And the movie was called The Last Hard Men with Charlton Heston. And I was doubling James Coburn. And we had to climb this 90-foot trestle. And for some reason, Coburn ended up with all the bullets around him and the guns, and everybody else, they're just climbing this trestle. And I hear this loud, go faster, because these guys are going, well, I'm carrying all this stuff trying to climb this train trestle. So then we get to the top of it, and they have these little platforms laid out, and you have to lay on a platform, and when the engine comes by, you had to count 6 cars, because the 6th car was the only car long enough and tall enough to roll underneath. So think about it. Now the train's going 20 miles an hour, and you see the engine, and you're laying here. Here goes the engine. There's 1, 2, 3. When you get to 5, you got to start moving to roll underneath this train. And there was 3 of us doing it. It was myself, Mike Adams, and a stuntman by the name of Tony Brubaker. And we were all laying on the track. Well, I had to go first, then it was Mike, and then it was Tony. And as you count the cars, I got to my car, I rolled in. I didn't hear any noises, so I figured the other guys. But after the train went by, nobody raised up to see if anybody didn't make it, because it was pretty hairy to roll underneath the train going like that to me.
Wow.
And then afterwards, they wanted to do a shot where they're underneath the track and they reach up and they grab the bar of the train and it takes them out of shot. That's how they get on the train. So what they did was Joe Canutt laid plywood down on the tracks. And I had a cable on me. So when I got to a certain mark and I'm on the plywood, I'm hanging onto this train. We're going 20 miles an hour. I let myself down and let the train pull me. Now I'm getting pulled by the train, and when I get to another mark, I reach up and grab the bar and pull myself up, and it looks like I hooked up to the train. Well, the problem is the train was going too fast, and when I let down, it just hit me, and I just started flopping underneath the train, in and out of the tracks.
Oh,
and then before they got the train stopped, we went off the plywood. So now I'm hitting the ties, the railroad ties. By the time they got the train stopped, I was buck-ass naked. I didn't have you know how your pants come off, like when your underwear are wet, they just roll off? Well, that's what happened to my pants. It just tore them all off. And we're standing there, and Joe's figuring out what to do. And he said, what do you think we should do? And I said, well, I think we should slow the train down a little, would be helpful. And he looked at my buddy Mike Adams, and Mike, I could see the color went out of his face. He said, give him your pants. I never seen a guy jump out of pants so fast in my life. So I put the pants back on, and then we did it again a little slower, and we got it done.
You're crazy. A sane man does not do that, Diamond.
No, but it pays the bills.
Questions, please. Yes, ma'am.
Will you share a stunt that you've done on NCIS that was memorable in some way?
The most memorable stunt I did on NCIS was on the pilot. And I was doubling Mark Harmon, and they're on a tugboat. And they have some terrorists, and a terrorist throws a grenade at Harmon, and it blows up. And now I don't know if you know what the steps look like on a tugboat, but they're straight up and down steel steps to go up to the pilot house. Well, I would have to say that was the most difficult one, because I had to come off the top of it backwards. So when the explosion goes, I throw yourself back. And I think I hit maybe 2 of them steps coming down, because it was straight up. And I came down, I came off backwards, hit one, and then hit this one, and I turned over all the way and came down on my head. And I guess that's what was the easiest part of it. And Harmon thought I killed myself. And so that was probably the most difficult ones I didn't want to do, but I did it. So.
Wow. Yes, sir.
On the movie comes to horsemen, did your dad do his own stunt riding when they were riding through the trees, picking up the cow?
Actually, no. In that show, a guy by the name of J.P. Evans, he was a world's champion roper, doubled him doing that.
Were you on that set?
No, I wasn't. I was doing another show at the time. I have doubled my dad. I doubled him on the Gray Fox, where he did all the riding the horse and all that stuff. I did a lot of that for him, and then I doubled him. Actually, I got to tell you, there's a good friend of mine here, and his name is Greg Walker. He is a great stunt man, and him and I did a show together called The Legends of the Lone Ranger. And I tell you how tricky it is to make a fallen horse fall. The stunt coordinator had his buddy there, Pinky, to fall this horse. And to show you, no matter how great of a cowboy you are, being a stuntman, it's different. And they put Pinky up on this fallen horse. He has to run him up the side of a hill, take a shot, then take the horse, fall the horse. Well, they gave Pinky 3 shots at it, and Pinky couldn't get the horse down. The stunt coordinator yelled at Greg and said, "Do it for me." Well, now the horse is all jacked up, and he don't want to do anything. And I looked at Greg and said, "Better you than me." And, you know, everybody wants to do a good job. Well, I tell you what, old Greg cowboyed up, got on the horse, ran him up the horse, jerked this horse over backwards, came off, and it looked great. And that just goes to show you, no matter how great of a cowboy you are, if you're not a stunt man, it doesn't help. And that's Greg Walker sitting right there, and he is probably one of the finest stuntmen in Hollywood, too.
With the Stuntmen's Association, now, does that help as far as making sure that it's not just rodeo cowboys that do this stuff, that it's actually stuntmen that know what they're doing? Or
I got in the Stuntmen's Association in '75, and back then, yes, it did. Now, it's more or less, to me, I think it's just a club. You know, the way things are run now, it's so much different than it was before. You know, back when I got into it, it'd be easy to work 2 or 3 jobs in a day. Now there's so many guys that never happens. And so the Stuntmen's Association, you know, can only do so much. And if it hadn't been for the Stuntmen's Association, they brought a lot of great things to help us where we are today. And I think the younger kids are more about hooray for me. You know, so, and they're doing where when Greg and I would go on a show, they'd take 8 or 9 stunt guys. Now they take 2 because everything is done in blue screen, and it's you know, that's the wave of the future. It's more like cartoons than the actual stunts.
okay. Anybody else with a question? Yes, ma'am.
Are you doing the LA one?
No, I did the pilot of it, and I'm not doing the other one.
You don't like it?
Do you like it?
Well, I only watched it once.
Did you like it?
Not particularly.
Okay, that's kind of my feeling.
Anybody else with a question? Yes, sir.
Did Diamond ever work with Ron Rondell?
Yes, I know Ronnie Rondell very well. In fact, his son was the coordinator on LA NCIS, but then he got a better job, and he went to New Zealand.
Oh, wow.
And quit it.
New Zealand.
I
Okay.
think I would have too.
Somebody else? Anybody else with a question? Yes, sir.
You've been in the business for quite a number of years now. What changes have you seen in terms of the requirements,
The requirements as a stuntman?
things that you're asked to do, and attention to safety?
Well, you know what? You're not asked to do as many of the stunts that we were asked to do. Because, like I say, blue screen has come into effect. Big high falls now, like you don't do them anymore. Everything's done on cables. And so, you know, it's changed quite a bit. And even the money has changed. Where back in the 80s, you could make a really good living as a stuntman. Now, these younger kids, you know, they've kind of sold themselves out and they will work for nothing. I mean, we are a union, the Screen Actors Guild, so they do have to get this amount of money. But back in the other days, in the 80s, you'd have a stunt adjustment after you did a stunt. Well, they're so happy just to have the job, they'll, you know, turn it down. So for all the stuntmen who made a big deal about this is what we need, and Lauren can tell you that that's kind of gone out the window with a lot of these new kids. So it's just a matter of time, and I say probably 10 years from now, you won't even have stuntmen in the movie industry because it'll all be done with actors and blue screen, unless the people stop watching it. Like if you watch the Mission Impossibles, you know, the new ones, it's all blue screen, and Tom Cruise comes out and says he did his own stunts. Well, yeah, he was on a motorcycle on a turntable with a screen behind him, and yes, he did it all. You know, and that's the way they're doing things now. And it isn't cheaper. So I don't know, you know, it might be a little safer, but it's not cheaper. And I don't think they've ever thought safer was better than cheaper. So
I want to thank you.
No,
We're
thank you.
out of time. Thank you so much for
thank
joining
you very
me.
much.